But more interestingly, when they talk about supporting the art, there are always reasons why they'll tell you they're not ready to give it to the art. And primary of the three that we commonly hear is one, that there's no urgency to support the art. So it's really our job as fundraiser to explain why there is urgency to support the art. And second, always, as the reason stated for not supporting us is that art is elitist, is really serving the educated and the well-to-do. So you're not really serving the everyday common person. And the third reason is it's very hard to measure impact. What is the return on investment? Most of the corporate would ask. So these are the three main reasons, and I put some of the answers that we normally, trying to provide as a counter to the reason to know. But more importantly, we're also trying to reframe the way we ask for donation and for support. Instead of asking for help, I think most donors these days don't really want to. They get asked for help all the time. For us, we really have to figure out what's the win-win. And almost you want to turn the table the other way around and say, you're truly privileged to be invited to help us create an impact for the audience and the people we serve. So it's not about asking you for the money, but it's really inviting you to help us to create impact for society. And I think you'll see that most of the messages that I guess when we approach corporate in seeking their support and donation, we're very mindful of that particular reframing of how we ask for support and donation. So our very first corporate donors that come on board is really to make a very significant donation to the gallery. And the way I guess we approach it in terms of our initial setup to raise funds is I started the division with two other colleagues, so it's a really small team. So we really have to be very focused. And the thought of, I guess in terms of fundraising, we always hear from everyone, the advisor, that 10% of your donors will account for probably 90% of your total gift. And therefore, we have to focus on the large gift to start with. Now, I can't go to any of the corporates to say, please support us. We are national art institutions. We really have to understand why would they want to come on board. And when we thought about how could one engage corporate in Singapore to support us, the very first thing we had in mind was that looking at our own content, our two permanent exhibitions going to present art from Singapore and Southeast Asia, dating from the late 19th century to present time. So when we start thinking about who could support that narrative, one that comes to mind is DBS. DBS started as in fact, Post Office Savings Bank of Singapore in the 19th century, helping everyone to save money and put it in the bank. And then later on, they also became the Development Bank of Singapore that helped fund the growth of Singapore from its independence in 1965 to present day. So when we share the narrative of the visual that we're presenting, the Singapore story through visual arts, it really represents who they are. They can resonate with their corporate history in funding the growth of Singapore. And they immediately want to come on board and say, we'd like to support you in terms of making a significant donation, but to have naming of your Singapore gallery after the corporation. So I guess that's the reason for them coming on board. Prior to that, DBS has really never supported the art industry at all. Other than corporate, we have also managed to, been able to bring on board a family, wealthy, I guess, family in the region. Ng Teng Fong is one of they make their fortune in real estate development. So you can see that this is our roof garden, and what they're showing you here is actually an artwork commission that presented by Rikrit, a global artist of Thai origin. And Ng Teng Fong family actually, one of the challenge for getting them on board is that they insisted that it should be known as the Roof Garden Gallery. It's not just an architectural roof garden that they want to support. They truly want to support a gallery because we're a museum. So sometimes you do have to work with the sponsor. If they want it to be known as a roof garden, you name it a roof garden gallery. at the gallery in there, it's not a problem. So this is something we also took a page from the Met Museum. They have the summer installation. So we have also created this annual commissions that we showcase a important artist that could talk about the history of the region through an art installation. Basically, before we opened, we were selling a dream, but 3 years down the road, we need to explain, what's the return on investment. So we're still learning, because other than the quantitative, results, how many visitors you get, how many programs you create, and how much advertisement equivalent value you create and PR value you create for your donors. We're still learning as to how we can do a more impactful way of reporting the impact that we create with their donations. So our very first attempt was to create a gift impact report. In fact, our very first edition was just a gift report, and we changed the name to gift impact report. And we carry them here, and we're sharing with all of you. And because it was quite meaningful to a lot of our donors, we managed to, convince our communications colleague as well as our CEO to say that why not build the impact report as part of your annual report, so we don't have to duplicate that. So going forward, our annual report will always be focusing on the impact that we create, and using language that is more emotive, so that when you read the report, you almost immediately want to reach into your pocket and support us. So that's the kind of impact we want. But we still, our board still want us to continue to push us to say, how else can we do social accounting, impact accounting, so that we can meaningfully report. But learning from our various donors, I think different institutions look for different returns. So I don't think it's a one size fit all. So ultimately, we still need to report to major donors in a way that will satisfy the mandate for the reasons why they support us. Final thing I want to say is that donors also want to make sure that you have very strong governance. And increasingly, well, of course, looking at compliance and all that, this is pretty much the hygiene factor. You have to do, to show them that you do look at, money laundering. Is, the art world, people are very concerned about legitimizing, money flow through buying art. So we have to worry about that. So we do have a very stringent due diligence process before we take on any gift. But what is very topical these days is also about ethical business practice. So we heard about a lot of stories in US and Europe these days that, when you're involved with donors who are deemed to be not practicing ethical business, there's a lot of pressure by interest group for you to, sort of distance from those institutions. So for us, we're starting to think very carefully about putting some of that into our gift acceptance policy as well. It's only when you have a good, governance that then your donors will start to really believing you and trusting in you, because ultimately people only donate to institutions that they can trust, that they can be proud of, and to an individual that they can rely upon.